Scott Pilgrim is a series I hold very near and dear to my heart. While yes, Scott is a total scumbag, jackass, clueless idiot, I can't help but see some of my geeky, punk rock loving self inside of him. I loved the comics growing up, and I think the film is easily one of my favorites of all time, and definitely a comfort watch for me. I am also an avid enjoyer of anime, so when I heard that one of my favorite series was mixing with one of my favorite mediums, I couldn't have been more pumped. Now, after having seen the entire first season, and at the risk of being harassed online, I have to say that I utterly adore Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. I mean, it's really, really good. I was a bit shocked at first with the direction, as I think many were, but as I gave it more time, it ended up winning me over. I had a little bit, I think, of Netflix PTSD, as you might say, from Cowboy Bebop. I definitely felt like, oh no, not again. I need to preface now, though, moving forward after this, that I need to discuss mild spoilers to even really talk about why I like Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. I promise to keep them brief and contained to the first few episodes, possibly 1, 2, and 3, maybe even a little less than that, and not show anything on screen or discuss anything that might really give stuff away that would be interesting. I'll keep it all very brief and keep it vague. Some of the outrage, if you could even call it that, about the series is that people, I think, saw the marketing and assumed that it was a one-to-one adaptation, as I sort of had as well. A more faithful telling of the comic than the movie is. This is not that. This is not a one-to-one or a more accurate representation of what Scott Pilgrim is as a comic. I think that's totally fair for people to be upset by that, but I also think it's worth noting that their PR and their marketing was done during the actors' strike, and if you watch some of Edgar Wright's more recent interviews and interviews with Brian Lee O'Malley as well and some of the cast, they kind of drop hints that it's going to be new and that it's going to be different, and that's just something they couldn't do until, right before release, since the strike just ended. The series is effectively a retelling, a what-if scenario, and also at the same time kind of a sequel. It kind of leans on the movie's existence and or the comic's existence, depending on how you want to look at it, and plays around with that idea. And I think it's really, really cool. It's a fun fourth wall break on occasion. As a big fan, this is awesome. I mean, I didn't think I'd get new Scott Pilgrim content after all these years. I figured it would always exist as something that might get adapted again, but definitely not new content. So I'm definitely excited about that. As much as I was looking forward to seeing Scott Pilgrim fully realized in an anime form, my disappointment for that not existing is completely outweighed by my enjoyment of this new series. The first episode plays fairly straight, following what you would expect from Scott Pilgrim's precious little life, but throws in a twist at the end. After that, we enter a what-if-esque world and move into sort of following Ramona and secondary characters that never got a lot of screen time the first time around. I think some people won't like this, especially due to there being a lack of Scott in the first half of the series, but I promise you'll get plenty of Scott as the series goes on. And all 7 Evil X's also get a lot more screen time, which I thought was really cool. Some of them are even kind of likable, which was surprising. As for following Ramona mostly, in the words of Julie, the haters, yeah, I know it's called Scott Pilgrim. Why are we following Ramona? But trust me, the way Ramona's character arc goes, it adds so much depth and enjoyment to me going back to the old series, and also makes Scott's new arc this time around really feel fulfilling and rewarding when we get around to it. It's completely necessary. It's a full-on setup for a great payoff. It's also nice to see Ramona get this sort of growing up redemption arc that Scott has in the initial series. I always feel like we see a lot of Scott's growth, but never get as much growth for Ramona. Both of them were kind of bad people, and both of them did a lot of bad stuff, but Ramona is sort of brushed to the side throughout most of Scott Pilgrim, and Scott takes center stage. It's nice to see what was happening with Ramona sort of on the other side of the coin, and to see, how her thought process was during all of this. It's really cool, and like I said, it adds another layer to going back to the old series or movie. It's really nice. I also loved the detail of having her change her hair color each episode. I mean, I know that's something small, but I was incredibly happy to see it. It was just neat. It was just fun. And overall, I'm incredibly happy to see more Ramona, and I'm happy we get to see her reflect on life, just like Scott does. As for the castmates that get more time, I'm pretty much across the board super happy with everything I got to see. Knives' arc is drastically different, but I love it. It's a welcome change, it's compelling, and her and Steven Stills get a lot of crazy moments together. That's really fun. Kim gets more of her comic backstory, which I'm very happy about. That was some of my favorite parts of reading the original comic, and when it didn't make it in the movie, I was always disappointed, but being able to see it now is awesome. I specifically need to give a shout out to Brandon Lee Routh. He utterly killed it. He was so funny as Todd Ingram. I mean, he really, really crushed it. Huge props to him. I mean, he'll never probably see this, but I really want to give him a huge shout out. So good. Such a good job. I also want to shout out the Lucas Lee and Gideon Graves bromance, I guess you could call it. It's really funny, and I enjoyed seeing it happening. And Matthew Patel finally getting to flex his mystical powers was very, very cool as well. I really, really enjoyed that. Along with those characters, we also get Julie, Steven Stills, Young Neil, who are all hilarious and have great moments, especially Young Neil. Young Neil is really, really funny this time around. I'm so glad we got to see him. I love this sympathy for the devil thing they sort of do with the X's. It's very interesting, and it adds another layer to the series overall. And I also like the idea that it shows that Scott and Ramona maybe weren't so different from their exes after all. We saw this with Scott in the comics, but getting to see that with Ramona as well was really nice. Now, let's talk about fight scenes. Oh man, I love the fights in this show. Oh, they were so good. Science Saru is an amazing anime studio, and they've done some great films, and this is no exception. The animation's crisp, beautiful. It pays huge tribute to the art style that O'Malley coined, no pun intended. The video game-inspired world of Scott Pilgrim was born to be animated, and I am so happy to see it fully achieved. I particularly loved all the little video game sounds, movies, and references throughout the fights. It really added a nice layer to the movie, but it was really elevated during the anime here. It was really, really cool. There's a kinetic energy to everything on screen. It hits hard, superhuman powers feel electric, and definitely some insane choreography. I can easily see myself coming back just to enjoy these fights with their great musical backdrops. I say music? I guess I should mention Anamanaguchi then, shouldn't I? Man, they crushed it. Aw, it was so good. I can see myself going back, reading the Scott Pilgrim comics, and putting their game soundtrack and their now anime soundtrack on in the background while I read, and it adding this cool, nice, like, layered effect while I go through the series. It's so good. I loved it. There's like a fantasy inside of your head. A reflection of life is always how I felt Scott Pilgrim came off, especially when you have like the love scenes. I always thought they felt dreamlike in a way. You know, like when you have a dream about something, it reflects real life, but then your interests sort of pop in and, you know, it becomes this scrambled thing in your head. Anamanaguchi's soundtrack really adds to this level. It really feels like dreaming about the girl of your dreams in this video game world that your head's put together, and they really elevate it to a point that I really didn't think was even possible. It's really cool, and I absolutely love the way they put it all together. Serious props to them. Great, great sound work. I love the soundtrack as well. Highly recommend just listening to it after you've seen the series. And don't listen to it before you've seen the series. I actually would say it gives some stuff away, so don't do that. As for some thoughts on the story overall, without jumping into too much spoilers, I really loved it. The twists and turns were unexpected. It kept me curious the whole time. It discusses age and how changes can skew old memories to appear to us in the present, and makes us question why our old selves ever went down certain paths in the first place. Things like age, time, and people growing apart or coming together changes everything, and makes you think maybe it wasn't worth it, or that maybe something in life should have changed. Life isn't pretty, but that doesn't mean it's too late to start again, or too early to move on. Doing your best to be everything you can be is all anyone ever asks of you, and don't let your past failures ever hold you back in this life. It's an amazing story, and I really found it compelling. In the end, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, in my eyes, is a masterpiece. I know not everyone will feel that way, but I can't even describe how much I enjoyed it. I don't even want to give it a rating. I feel way too attached to the series to give a fair rating. So, unlike in the past, I'm just going to tell you, please watch it. And if you do want to watch it and you haven't seen other Scott Pilgrim media, I would highly encourage you to go check out the movie, read the comics, and then come to this. This is sort of the cherry on top for a fan, and I couldn't be happier with it. Scott Pilgrim is just, it's an amazing piece of media, I think is the best way I can say it. And we're really blessed to have so many awesome versions of it out there, and it's a great time to be a fan. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a great pleasure to review this series. If you enjoyed this, I plan to do a really in-depth spoiler talk sometime next week, Monday or Friday, not sure. I try to upload twice a week, work willing. And I also stream on Twitch if that's your jam. You can come check me out, link in the description. There's also a link in the description to my music project. If you like electronic music, drum and bass, that sort of thing, go check it out. Superlunary on everything but YouTube because copyright sucks. Other than that, I think that's all I got. Drop a sub, please, and support the channel. Much love. Enjoy Scott Pilgrim, and I'll catch you all on the flip side. Peace!